Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the last session here of the day, which is designed to give you a really deep view into the CBD market. CBD has certainly come out of nowhere to be one of the fastest growing industries. The market hit more than $600 million in 2018 and is expected to hit more than $22 billion by 2022, which is why all of you are here today. We saw yesterday there was a great session that gave some a good overview of the CBD market, the ABCs of CBD. Today we'll look to go quite a bit deeper here, allow you to really get some insights to allow you to understand how you can incorporate CBD into your strategy and take advantage of this market. We're joined today by some very interesting and qualified people, a great mix here to be able to speak to this market and provide some really keen insights for you. We have Arnaud de Rowley here, who is the founder and CEO of Blink, as well as the chairman of the ISO standards group for vapor products. We have Kees Mandel, who is the founder and CEO of Cannadips, which is a cannabis and CBD based company that provides smokeless tobacco products in the cannabis and CBD space, as well as Cameron Forney, who is the president, founder, and CEO of Cura, which owns the Select brand. They're one of the top top cannabis vape companies in the country, as well as one of the fastest growing CBD companies as well. So that's a brief introduction, but why don't you all tell us a little bit more about you, a little bit about your experience, and then we'll dive into the CBD industry.
All right, well, I guess I'm first. Hello everyone. I'm going to try to spare you the French accent because I only have a French name. I am French, but I just wanted to see if you guys were all attentive. So it's very, very happy to be here. Been in the traditional vaping industry for 10 years. So kind of doing that crossover from nicotine vaping to cannabis vaping was actually a pretty interesting experience when we first started getting people to come to you with cotton wicks and looking at the viscosity of the oils. Like, what the hell is this industry doing? It's time to go in there and change some things. It was really scary. So that's going through all the hoops, all the regulatory frameworks in nicotine vaping, and seeing what the FDA is doing now to nicotine vaping. Basically, no new products are allowed on the market since August 8th, 2016. I made it a mission to avoid that happening to the cannabis industry. So bringing all the standards work and being chairman of the ISO Standards Committee for Vapor Products and of the European Commission for Vapor Products gives me leverage to try to really push proper standards and safety standards with regards specifically to CBD. I don't know if you all heard, but this morning the European Parliament announced that they were pushing the states to regulate and allow medical cannabis across Europe. I think the next step for Europe is going to be a cannabis products directive to really put it on the states to do something about it. And I think that's going to be the next really big market with regards to CBD, because right now it's a free-for-all in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Regulations are definitely something that is high on everyone's mind right now, and how to ensure high-quality products, and that's something we'll definitely discuss in quite some depth today.
Similar to you, I come from the cannabis and CBD space as well. Our product Cannadips is a chewing tobacco alternative. It's a smokeless cannabis product. I started in the industry about 10 years ago, living in Humboldt County, California. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Humboldt. There's a recent Netflix documentary, Murder Mountain, which kind of outlines my community fairly well. There's a little sensationalism, but we are the Napa Valley of cannabis up there in Northern California. So I've been in the industry a long time. I went back and got my master's in business, wanted to bridge the gap between an industry I saw that was more outlaw, country, hillbilly, into what we're going towards with medicine and consumer-friendly products, innovative products. Came onto the cannabis product when one of my best friends from high school gave me a call, said he had the best idea in the world that I shot down, as I tend to do, which wasn't the right idea. And we looked it up online, no one had done it. And we started figuring out, how can we make this innovative product and develop this new technology. And from then, we have a cannabis company in California, so that's its own entity. But for CBD, you want to keep these things separate. So we have, 2 different companies, 2 different brands, different manufacturing facilities, a whole different infrastructure, and that's, something to really be aware of and think about. While at the same time, it is really beneficial for a brand to play on both sides. Our cannabis side definitely provides some strength to what we're doing. So excited to be here. A little bit intro what we're doing.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Cameron Forney. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of Cura Partners. Under Cura Partners, we have multiple entities. One of those is Cura Wellness, which is our CBD hemp-derived side. The other is Cura, broken down by state, and that's in Oregon, California, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Florida, Canada, and it's another one I'm missing. That one too. We're also, the CBD side's in about 48 states. That does the Select CBD brand. That's in everything from C-store to big box retail to, smoke shops. Very, very highly, very well-selling product. Company started in 2015, right at the end. My partner had a Barrett's esophagus. Every time he would smoke flower, the carcinogens in the flower would irritate the cell damage in his throat. He'd get bronchitis 4 or 5 times a year. Said, okay, there's got to be a better way. We have to start looking into this. What's a better way to do this? Started looking into vaporization, started buying every single product in the industry, pulling it apart, understanding how it works, what's happening, started working on our own design of products, and started finally kind of understanding of what we wanted to launch with, with a ceramic and cotton wrap around it. That ended up doing pretty well. The Select brand goes through about 1.1 million cartridges a month right now between all those states. With about 550 employees, footprint in Canada, footprint in Poland, just started with the UK last week. So we're scaling very, very quickly, very, very rapid growing company, incredible culture, incredible people, and excited to be here, so thanks.
Great. My name's Bethany Gomez. I'm the managing director of Brightfield Group. We're a market research firm predominantly focused on the cannabis and CBD industries. We first started covering the CBD space about 2 years ago when we had a lot of cannabis clients come to us and start saying, okay, I want to do a CBD line. Should I do a CBD line? What is going on in this market? I've covered a lot of mainstream CPG market research in my past in emerging markets as well as domestically, and I have to say CBD is by far the most confusing, dynamic, and interesting industries I've ever seen and ever covered. So we find that when people are first starting to understand CBD, there's a very steep learning curve. So on that note, let's give a brief overview. I know this was touched on a bit yesterday, but what is CBD and what would you like those who are new to this to understand in a nutshell?
Sure, I can jump in. So CBD is a cannabinoid, right? There's, depending on what country you're in, identified between 340 and 400 different cannabinoids out there. CBD is just one of those individual cannabinoids, typically known for its anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety benefits. So what does this mean, right? We hear all these words, broad spectrum, full spectrum, isolation, what are they? And all it is a different varietal of a full spectrum, meaning a multitude of cannabinoids, a broad spectrum being incredibly vague, meaning some cannabinoids here or there, and then an isolation, which is just the cannabinoid CBD. CBD, what we're seeing is CBD is used mostly by anyone from the house mom who wants to take a puff on the pen to lessen anxiety or to substitute the glass of wine, all the way to people using it to kind of help sleep, to kind of alleviate that pressure when it's time to go to bed and that agitation, all the way from pain creams, ointments, gel caps, different items that help relieve that swelling and inflammation. And then you start working your way into broad spectrum and full spectrum, depending on what you're actually trying to get from a product. More broad spectrum can be a difference of different terpene profiles as well as cannabinoids. And then when you start talking full spectrum, that's going to be more a broad base of terpene profiles as well as a large spectrum of cannabinoids as well. The only problem is when you start going into full spectrum, you got to make sure that the products that you're buying aren't, exceeding the 0.03 limits. And with labs having a variance in potency testing from 5 to 10% varietal, that can be kind of risky sometimes. So you got to really make sure you're finding the right product that meets your brand specifications, you're finding the right product that meets the regulations in that city, county, state, or country that you're working with. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a background just on CBD as a generalization. If anyone else has anything to add.
You kind of touched into terpenes, which I think a lot of people don't understand or haven't been exposed as much in the industry. But when he mentions terpenes, which are in full spectrum or broad spectrum products, a terpene essentially is it's a chemical that's essentially responsible for flavor, smell. That's what most people think about when you open up a flower product. You smell it, you taste it, but it also acts as a carrier molecule. So the terpene is able to take the cannabinoid to different receptors in the body. It has a really important effect in delivering the cannabinoid. So that's one reason why a lot of people talk about, isolate. It is just CBD. It's missing the terpenes. And that's one reason when we develop our products. I mean, we preserve all the terpenes. I think obviously you do as well. So definitely something to be aware of. Terpenes is another buzzword similar to CBD that people really need to educate their consumers on, because it's just as beneficial, if not more, than possibly the cannabinoids themselves.
Also different varietals of terpenes. There's plant-derived terpenes, food-grade terpenes, and then cannabis or hemp-derived terpenes. So those are three major different varietals that you'll have to keep an eye out on the market as well.
Yeah, there's even actually a fourth category that a lot of the flavor houses are working on is vapology grade, where they take out some of those allergens. I learned this very recently, so I'm just sharing the information. They take out some of those allergens that we have in terpenes, and the current state of the science and research that we have, and when I mean we, I mean as an industry, as a scientific community looking at cannabis, is this big. We have all of this to discover again, and it's very, very important to understand what's going inside and the products that you're going to be pushing as well. But you're never going to have, today at least, 100% understanding of the entire effects, like the entourage effect and all that versus isolates, because science just does not exist yet. Focus has been brought to this a couple of years ago, and it's gonna get bigger and broader, but up until now, there was no science behind it. So we're kind of treading the waters here as an industry and being together, and it's very, very important that the people that you work with have this kind of insight and have an entire program in place to show that these products are not dangerous, or to identify potential dangers in the future, potential toxicity issues in the future, and just strip them out as it goes. Going back to the regulatory side as well, if we're able to show this as an industry to the regulators, they're just gonna let us do business normally. If we're not, they're going to screw us.
Absolutely. And we'll get into a little bit more about the regulatory framework in a while, but just to zoom out also and level set for everyone here. So CBD, what you see all across the floor, CBD is derived from hemp. CBD can also be derived from marijuana, which are both from the plant genus Cannabis sativa. So what you'll find in dispensaries is typically marijuana-derived CBD that may have CBD as well as THC and other cannabinoids included. Anything that has THC is more psychoactive in nature. The hemp-derived CBD has less than 0.3% THC by definition and is therefore non-psychoactive. So this, CBD has really grown and has exploded in popularity because it has this ability to harness the many of these medical benefits that come from the marijuana plant, from the Cannabis sativa plant, without producing that, those psychoactive components, without getting you high. So these CBD products will not get you high, but they can be used for a wide variety of conditions, including, as was mentioned, anxiety, depression, insomnia that, plague a lot of consumers, as well as things like arthritis and chronic pain, women's health conditions. And that's what's really helped to drive this industry beyond just when it first started, it came out of the smoke shop industry and the dispensaries as those consumers who were familiar with cannabis, who were familiar with cannabinoids, and that they had that medicinal value, but didn't want to be stoned all the time or didn't want to consume psychoactive products all of the time. But now CBD has been able to grow into many different consumer groups. One thing that many smoke shops are finding is that it helps to bring additional revenues, because the consumers that are already coming into their shops will purchase those products for themselves and then pick up products to give to their grandmother, to give to their mother for their anxiety or for their arthritis or conditions like that. So we're seeing some great different consumer segments emerge, and that's where I'd like to kind of direct that next question. As this industry is changing and as those consumer faces are changing, how do you find, in particular directed at Cameron and Case, how are you finding those consumer groups? And coming from the cannabis space, how are those consumers, different from cannabis, and how do you pivot your strategy towards that?
That's an interesting question, finding out who the exact consumer group is for CBD versus THC. I mean, what I can say on the CBD side, every mammal could and would want to be a consumer of CBD. I mean, let's just use pets, for example. The veterinary space, I think pets are buying CBD for your pets is probably the #1 selling product in the CBD space and in the cannabis space. Coming from my stance on the CBD, it's interesting because you have to really be careful. You don't want to market. I mean, CBD is beneficial from everyone from a grandma to a child. So you have to be really, careful in marketing your segment and not trying to appease to everybody, because then you're just doing too much. You're shooting too far with your brand, and then it kind of loses its message and its voice. So there's definitely, I think, a lot of place to play when creating brands and developing, because, everybody should be using CBD. On the THC side, that's more of it's technically branded and created more as like a party drug. I mean, THC has its own amazing medicinal benefits, and that's its own conversation. But we have to be really careful in differentiating with CBD, and creating something that's more than just, because it doesn't get you high. It's a strictly a medicinal compound that relaxes the body, that you want to build into your everyday life. That's what we're trying to do, is create lifestyle products and lifestyle brands, and make it more than just like, oh, I took my big edible before Friday night, but make this like, I use this every day. This is something that fills up my receptors on a daily basis, and this is part of what I do. So yeah.
Yeah, what we're seeing with CBD is anyone that is dealing with issues like inflammation or other areas, it's very difficult to gather data, in this space right now. A lot of retailers don't want to turn it over. A lot of people keep their numbers confidential. So it's very difficult to isolate exactly who that target customer is. But we're seeing growth in pretty much all major segments. Gel caps have been growing very significantly with baby boomer type demographic. The vape pen has been great for people on the go that are just using it to take a couple puffs to alleviate some anxiety here and there, all the way down to a tincture. I think everyone has heard the word tincture. Tincture is one of the top selling products in the entire space right now, as well as things like CBD gummies. The gummy craze is real right now, and it's pretty significant. So I think it was one of the most searched terms on the internet as well. So we're seeing a lot of different kind of varietals and different products for different SKUs, targeting different customer groups. But I wouldn't really isolate it to just like who the #1 segment is purchasing it. We're seeing growth in all segments, and a lot of growth in the 38 and older category. So that's about as broad as that.
Are you noticing category-wise too, though? It seems like similar to the tobacco space, like the smokeless category, where there's discrete, fast-acting products is kind of where we're seeing the most growth. I mean, is that similar to you? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like you were right earlier when you're talking about different products for different times. You know, some people may take a gel cap in the morning. Some people may put a pen in their pocket to puff on that throughout the day. Some people, you know, may take their CBD gummy later in that afternoon. So we are seeing different variations of products for different times. But, you know, the vape market, as you guys know, is enormous. We're seeing a ton of, so our top selling products go vape, tincture, and actually I have pets like right down at the very bottom of that.
Okay.
So I may have different data than you do, or maybe I'm just missing a big piece of the market because we're seeing a little bit difference there. But other than that, the market is just so rapidly growing and expanding. But you are seeing a lot of people just putting CBD everywhere, and you may not always be getting that. I don't know if you guys just saw the news report that went out a couple days ago where they're actually testing products, and they were saying they just sprinkled the product on the top. That's not going to get you a homogeneous formula whatsoever, and that's not going to pass any sort of testing standards ever. And then, you know, once you get that brand damage and reputation right there, it is almost nearly impossible to come back from that. So you got to be really careful about where you're sourcing from, what vendors you're working with. Do you want me to go into that, or do you?
Yeah, I think it's something that is going to be really of interest to a lot of people in the audience of, okay, you want to start sourcing CBD, you want to start carrying CBD, you know that there's a lot of good actors in the industry, you know there's also a lot of bad actors in the industry. There's, you know, many products, there's no testing standards right now, there is no, it's very difficult for companies to understand which ones are just have no CBD in them at all, have, you know, CBD just sprayed on top. How should retailers approach that? What should they be asking for? What are those the standards? What are your companies doing, and what would you recommend for these retailers as they're trying to vet potential brands?
I'd say you start in the equipment.
Yeah.
Start there, and then we'll go into supply chain.
Looking at the equipment, so just to introduce the subject, if you're carrying a CBD, I'm going to take the example of vape. You have the product that your clients are buying is this. It's not just the oil. It's not just the device. It's the combination of both. You can have the best oil in the world. If you have a shitty device, the customer is going to buy a shitty product, and it goes the other way around. It's very, very important to understand the concept of the product people are buying. Another aspect to understanding what's inside, I know a lot of people have been speaking about this, but sometimes people say, oh, look at my CBD product, and you look at it, it's hemp seed oil. How is that a CBD product? Or you see tincture bottles that say 250 milligram, but what is it? Is it 250 milligram per milliliter? Is it in the whole bottle? I mean, what dosage am I going to be getting when I use it? It's looking at the traceability as well of the products, looking at, are there batch numbers on there? Is the product correctly labeled when you're choosing to carry these products? Because in the end, if and when any regulatory body comes in, you guys are in the front lines as you're the retailers, as you're selling the product. You are the front lines. So you're going to be the first responsible. Then, of course, it passes on the chain of liability, but you're going to get hit with it first. So it's very, very important to understand what the entire quality process of your suppliers is. Do they have a QMS system? Are they certified or compliant with any kind of standards, whether we're talking UL, ASTM, ISO? It's doing your research. It's the same thing when you're going to go, if you go buy a product in China, you're just going to go see one person, and these guys are assemblers. They have their own suppliers, but they don't control those suppliers, so you don't have the right products and the right certifications for those suppliers. Again, it's just common sense when you're sourcing product and making sure that they're safe products.
I think from a retailer standpoint, picking products that, like you mentioned, that have traceability. I mean, for example, on the Cannadips product, we have a QR code on every tin that you can scan that not only has how much CBD is in this product, how much THC is in this product, which is none, but terpenes, et cetera. I mean, we have every ingredient that's in our product, from monk fruit, essential oils, batch codes, expiration dates of every ingredient, full traceability, because we want, to set the bar as high as possible. We don't want to see the CBD industry fall into peril like some other industries in the past where there isn't any accountability and then there's bad batches of product going to market. We understand, at least from a company standpoint, that we're under a microscope. And I think as a retailer, you really need to make sure that you purchase from companies that provide that to you and it's fully auditable. I mean, like Cameron was just talking about, there's that news blurb that just came out where they pulled, I think, was it 30 or 50 companies' products off the shelf, and more than half didn't have what they said they had in them. A large percentage of them had nothing. So I mean, there's that standpoint, and then also like, are there harmful things in these products? So you really got to find brands that have traceability that you can stand behind and sell in your stores. And from a manufacturer standpoint, if you're looking to create your own product, the number one rule that we've learned is you can't trust anybody but yourself. So if I'm going to buy X full spectrum THC oil, or excuse me, CBD oil from a company, they'll provide me a COA. I'm going to obviously take that. I'm going to take my own retention sample. I'm going to sample that on my own to verify their data. I'm going to manufacture my product, send that as well to verify that data, and really set the bar high so that we don't encounter issues on the manufacturing side that could lead to being named in one of those reports or putting out something that could hurt people. So really, there's a lot of people in this industry. It's moving really quickly, moving really fast. A lot of people want to make a quick buck. There's a lot of other people that want to be here for a long time and be legacy players. So really vetting out those relationships and doing your due diligence from all aspects of the industry.
Just if I can add a little bit to that traceability part as well, there's something that's really overlooked by a lot of distributors and a lot of retailers is look at the management team. Are there any researchers? Are there any scientists? Are there any PhDs on the team or working with the company? A lot of these companies, and I'm going to point at a couple of elephants in the room next door, have no clue what they're doing. They have no clue. You look at the entire marketing scheme, is that you guys are marketing to children, first of all. Second, there is no one that knows this industry, no experience at all. And just saying, oh, I'm gonna buy this isolate, I'm gonna put it in my e-liquid and sell it like that. Zero experience. So I think looking at, one of the big questions would be looking at the management team and looking at the science team from your suppliers, I think is vital.
From Cura's side, I mean, we have, we're dealing in some of the, starting in the cannabis space, we're dealing with some of the most scrutinous regulations in anywhere, in any industry. And that's regulations coming from city, county, state, country, BCC, OLCC, OHA, DEA, FDA. I mean, the acronyms go on and on that we have to deal with on a regular basis. So we have about 27 people in compliance, just ensuring what packaging goes in what states, what product goes in what states, what accountability do we have, and what product liability regulation do we have as well, internally as well as externally. We have in-house counsel, outside counsel, different counsel in each state as well. So the amount of money that goes in to compliance on a company that's actually doing this right is very, very significant. All of our product comes from a U.S. Farm Bill certified Department of Agriculture hemp farms that has all chain of custody, certificate of authenticity, tested for molds, mildews, microbials, pesticides, heavy metals, terpene profiles, and so forth. And all of that goes into each sheet and document of every single product with our company as well. That goes into a Department of Agriculture hemp handler license, which is only currently available in Oregon, Colorado, and Kentucky. So we really make sure that we have everything that's required to be as squeaky clean as possible in this space, because the last thing you want is to be in an article or an investigation or get hit by the DEA coming in because you're actually selling a THC product instead of a CBD product. That's why we've had a lot of really good luck with big box retailers. We're in New Seasons, Whole Foods, LA Grocer, Air One, Plaid Pantry, and then the list kind of goes on, because we have those credentials, because we have that verified supply chain of custody and test results, or COAs, as you guys will hear about those as well. I love the QR code idea as well. That gives a customer another ability to track and trace and ensure that the product that they're getting is actually accurate. But a good thing for you guys personally is to just test the product. right? When you get a new vendor and you get a new product in, just send it out to a testing lab. There's testing labs in each state. Just ask a couple questions. You know, what analyte panel are you guys testing for? You know, what cannabinoid profile panel are you testing for? And how low are your LOQs? So if you just kind of ask those general questions, send the product in, verify that it is what it says it is, and then great, you're off to business. Just, you know, make sure it's with a reputable company that's not doing anything that's going to get you in trouble.
Absolutely. You know, over the past year, we've seen the number of companies operating in this space jump from only 200 to more than 400, and there's more entering every single day. This is a really, really easy industry to jump into. There's no licensing fees, there's no regulations in place, so you know, you do see a strong proliferation of companies who can just put CBD in anything. And I think the key takeaway is, you know, do your due diligence, but at the very bare minimum, ask for the testing requirements, ask for the test results, and that your product has been third-party tested. The good actors in this industry are, you know, and many of the top players are ready to show you this. They're ready to scream it from the rooftops. They really want to differentiate themselves from, you know, the fly-by-night brands that may be of more dubious quality. So at the bare minimum, ask for the testing, you know, ask for the proof there. You know, to shift gears a little bit, you know, this industry has started out being predominantly tinctures. It was, you know, more than 60% tinctures, you know, on the market. That's declining as a percentage as we're starting to see some really innovative products or, you know, interesting new products come into the market. Vapes are holding share at about 10% of the overall market, but we're starting to see more interesting products enter that space. You know, maybe we can speak to some of the innovations that are coming out. What should people carry, you know, beyond just tinctures or capsules?
I'll take this one. I think people need everyday products, lifestyle products, like I talked about. You know, you see a lot of the same products out there, which is, you know, gummies, tinctures, et cetera, things that, you know, people are just pouring one thing into another, you know, throwing a big box brand on and moving forward. I think as our company, we're coming up with innovative new ways to consume CBD and other cannabinoids. I mean, for example, the Cannadips product. We use a water-soluble CBD, so we found a 30-year chemist that had developed this amazing technology so that we can preserve the terpenes and we can actually absorb in the mouth. So we have a product that absorbs in the buccal artery and transmucosally. We brought on a chief science officer that spent quite a bit of time at Harvard and has a PhD and helped us design a product to solve problems. You know, I mean, how can we get these things to work in the mouth? How can we get them to work quicker? How can we increase bioavailability? And I think people that really care about what they're doing, live it, eat it, breathe it, are going to those extents, not just looking for tomorrow's buck, but coming out of ways to push the industry forward. I mean, for example, we're coming out in 2 to 3 months with some new water-soluble drink mixes that also have amazing other herbs that work in synergy with CBD, everyday products that people can use that are healthy, efficacious, and work really well and aren't, you know, have stigma behind them. So I think it's, on the innovative standpoint, people that are really in it and care about it are, you know, I mean, we're paving the way and pushing it forward to be more than just a flash in the pan.
Absolutely.
And you know, on the innovation side, I mean, as you guys know, the hemp CBD market is absolutely erupting, right? It's poised for incredible growth here over the next several years. But what you really need to focus on is there's, out of 100% of the people out there, there's about 75% of those people who haven't tried any cannabinoid product whatsoever. That's whether it's THC or CBD alike, right? So our fastest growing market segment and the fastest growing group that we all need to go after right now in this space is the people that have never tried one of these products ever, right? I always use, you know, my grandmother or my father, for example. They would never try a THC or cannabinoid product. They would only try a CBD product, is to kind of dip that toe in the water and make sure that this is something that they would be interested in. And they start with like a muscle rub and they're like, oh, wow, that really worked. Oh, and it doesn't have any of that funny business in it. Oh, that's really interesting, right? And that's kind of that kind of bridge that kind of bridges the gap and starts getting people into the market, whether it's different form factors like Listerine strips, patches for pain relief, ointments, balms, gel caps. You're starting to see a broader variety in category because it's all up to how people choose to consume and what makes them feel most comfortable when they're consuming on a daily basis. So really look into different form factors that work for your customer and your clientele. It's not up to us to tell you exactly what's perfect for every single person, because everyone likes their consumption in form factors differently. So it's nice to carry a nice wide variety and let the people pick, and then base your inventory based on what's selling. And it's pretty simple. You guys all know that stuff.
And people react differently too. I mean, some people have zero effects with topicals, and then they use a vape. It works very well. We're all unique. We all have different systems that function. Hence the importance of having kind of these everyday products. And you were talking about people having gummies in the afternoon, a vape in the morning, and that just regulates itself. And understanding that there are these different groups as well. There's a study that came out not too long ago about specifically the entourage effect of cannabinoids mixed with just normal other essences like chamomile. The effect of chamomile was multiplied by 7 on the test group because it was mixed with CBD. So there's, again, let's go back to the research that we don't have as an industry. There's a broad range of what we can do. We're right here, and we've got all of this to explore in the coming years. So the innovation part is really, really important, and working with companies that understand that and that actually have an innovative program is also something that you can ask in terms of due diligence.
Absolutely. And having that strong product mix can really help to, drive customers into your stores and bring them back for more. And many of the retailers that we speak with will find that they're surprised by what moves, in their stores. You wouldn't think necessarily if people are coming in for smoke products that a topical would move very quickly, but people will. That's a good upsell product because people will come in for something else and then pick that up for either use for themselves or for other, friends or family members. Some of these really interesting products that have also started flying off the shelves. We were really surprised to see how quickly hemp flour, CBD joints and pre-rolls have been flying off the shelves, particularly in the, North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky area where there's much more cultivation. Gummies, vapes certainly do well through smoke shop channel, but those topicals, those new products are also performing quite well there. So at this point, we're starting to run pretty short on time here. I do want to open it up for some questions from the audience.
Great panel. Anyone has any questions, raise your hand and we can bring you the mic. I do have a question just starting out. For these guys who are probably looking to carry these products in their stores, how do they get them in their stores? And is there any marketing techniques, how they market these to their customers, perhaps?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, we can't. We're getting feedback
You
on
get
this.
okay. So
The question was regarding how, coming from the cannabis space, how are you adjusting to be able to market CBD? Is that
correct? Yeah. So for those guys who are looking to carry the product in their stores, how can they get your product or these products in their stores, and how can they market it? Some techniques perhaps to market to the customers.
Yeah, so I mean, it's different, right? It's different in every state, right? So the BCC in California has basically said that you can't have any hemp cannabis product or any hemp varietal of product inside of a BCC store at the moment. In Oregon, you can put a hemp product into an OLCC dispensary if it goes into metric first through verified supply chain. In Michigan, they pretty much have it banned until March 1. There's different regulation and legislation in each state, and typically when you're dealing with a dispensary, you have to deal with a governing entity of that, whether it's taxation in Nevada, OLCC, BCC, there's several different governing entities. So when you're looking at, a cannabis product and a CBD product in those, first, can you even get that product in there? Second, we have different brands. One of the brands is Select CBD, which is like a teal type color, and that's how we help differentiate that brand, as well as the packaging, which is a hemp type packaging. And then the THC side has its own complete variation of products and packaging as well. But it just depends. I mean, there's all sorts of different, industry trade activation methods that are used to jump into new stores. And it's been nice to be able to kind of piggyback off the success of the cannabis brand and bring that into the CBD space as well. But there are major differentiating factors that goes all the way from supply chain to marketing to those companies.
Absolutely.
I think the POS material is very, very important. I mean, we're based in Manhattan, and you go to any smoke shop in Manhattan, what sticks out to people is the POS. Are you putting this in a display box with 4 different varieties and five pieces of each? How are you pushing that, and how are you using that space to potentially upsell another product? Because the boxes and the POS on the small retail locations is very, very important, and especially with the price in New York. I mean, some of these retail locations are literally as big as 2 of these chairs. So you're fighting in terms of sale. You're fighting to get in front of those clients, and your best weapon for that fight is POS and the packaging.
I'd say couple that with education.
Yep.
You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
nothing's more important than getting into those accounts, activating the store owners. You know, those are going to be your best assets, so they understand how your product works. They understand how to deliver that message. So we definitely, as a company, spend a lot of time activating our accounts on the THC side and on the CBD side, so that they're successful in moving our products through the stores. You know, it's not just about getting in there once. It's about getting in there and getting turns and turns.
Sell-through rates.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, and that's one of the
Simple.
key issues in this industry right now is that now consumers actually know what CBD is, and it has this, this view as being kind of a miracle product, but people don't really know what it does. People don't know, still need a lot of education about how they can use it, what they can use it for, how much should they take, what are these products and how do you use them? So education, as with a brand new cannabis market, but education of those consumers on what your product actually does, which is a significant challenge because based off of the FDA, you can't make claims or anything like that, but you definitely need to, part of that marketing effort is to educate those consumers about CBD in general.
Hey everybody, great panel. My name is Deanna Clark Esposito, and I have a question just about how concerned all of you are with respect to FDA enforcement, because right after the Agricultural Improvement Act got signed, FDA came out a few hours later explaining how because CBD and of course THC are active ingredients and FDA approved drugs and were the subject of substantial clinical investigations before they were marketed as foods or dietary supplements, that under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, it's illegal to introduce drug ingredients like these into the food supply or to market them as dietary supplements, and that's regardless of whether it was hemp-derived. So I see what's going on as well. I'm an industry attorney. Everybody's selling it, but how concerned are all of you, especially you two at the end, but the brands, with respect to FDA enforcement? Thank you.
I mean, absolutely. You should always be concerned about what's taking place in the legalization and legislation. I mean, it would be really difficult to say that, this was an easy road to get here. It's not. It's like skateboarding downhill on one leg while people are shooting bullets at you and you're trying to juggle, because every single day a new regulation or legislation changes and the earth is constantly shifting beneath your feet. So being actively involved in the lobbying groups, being actively involved in the regulation and legislation, being very, very involved with, some of the top attorney firms in the state, in each state that you're putting that product into as well, has been very beneficial. But absolutely, there will 100% be some sort of FDA regulation and enforcement coming forward, and it's going to be who's prepared to be able to handle that, and who can handle that shift, and who can make that transition, and then there will be a lot of people that won't be able to. So, you can just be as prepared as possible and be ready for what's coming next, but it wasn't easy getting this far, and it's still going to be a little bit of work.
Just some insight with regards to the FDA. If you look at the FDA's press release, it's almost a copy and paste of their press release when nicotine vaping came out. The regulations have been out for a couple of years now. They are not being enforced. So I'm giving a business answer here to the concern. My lawyers would kill me, but it's not a recommendation, but when are they going to really start enforcing, and when are they going to be empowered and have the budget through appropriations to enforce this? I think that's a key issue, and understanding when that can happen can have a huge impact in terms of strategy for distributing these products.
And there's several other points that were made that the FDA has put out recently that I think are give a lot more promise to the industry. First of all, they've always made their highest priority going after companies who are making health claims that they're in no business to be making. So companies should not be making health claims. Supplements can't make health claims. Their enforcement to date on this industry has really targeted companies who have been making health claims that claim that their products cure cancer or things like that. So that they listed in the same publication as their top priority, right, is to going after those companies. They also did allude to opening up for public comment. They acknowledged that there is a great deal of interest in working towards a viable solution and a path to commercialization for these products. That path to commercialization is certainly going to include working with the industry to get through a type of GRAS certification to understand that these products, CBD products, are generally recognized as safe. That's something that all supplements have to go through essentially, and that once that kind of pathway has been cleared, and there has been some work from leading CBD companies in the industry on moving towards that, the FDA had no reason to go that far and to evaluate those claims prior to the legalization of hemp through the Farm Bill, and so they're now kind of reevaluating that. And there's definitely those then in the industry that are working very closely to try to push for the research that will support the safety and the efficacy of CBD. The FDA has understood that there is that significant push for people to, from both the consumer side as well as from the agriculture side, the agricultural community, to make a path for mass market legalization of CBD products. And they're getting pressure from the same agricultural community that pushed the Farm Bill hemp legalization through. More than 95% of farmers that cultivate hemp within the United States, their margins, their profits come from the CBD industry. So if you shut down CBD, then all of that win for your farmers goes away. So there's an expectation that there's going to be a shift, that those policies will have to be rationalized from the FDA standpoint. They're certainly looking at rationalizing the whole, their whole policies towards supplements in general. Right now, there was recently an announcement, on that front, but in the meantime, they've made it clear that their enforcement efforts are going to be targeted towards those products that are making health claims that they're in no business to be making, because those are of the greatest concern for public safety.
And the more you err to your side of caution, the better, right? Having hemp handler licenses in that state makes us feel very, very comfortable. However, it's completely up to your level of risk tolerance. So it's this decision everyone has to make for themselves as well.
Hey everybody, Norm Bauer here. I'm with Vape Mentors, and I'm also a writer for CBD Magazine. As an educator in the industry, I have attended all dozen or so of all the educational workshops this session. Kudos to you for going out on a high note, because you're not just talking about the conceptual, but you're talking about the realities. So in the early days of vaping, when I saw vape shops erupt, there was a huge disconnect between the vapors and the smokers. Vapors didn't want to have anything to do with smokers. And I see, as we now enter into Vape 2.0, I see a big disconnect between CBD users and vape shops. As you touched on, the CBD client is not your vape client. They feel uncomfortable going into the shops where the kids have their hats backwards and all the tats and everything. And no offense to any of you who are that. It's just that it's a different demographic. So I'm not a big fan of vape shops carrying CBD products, but I'm a huge fan of CBD-only shops who are working more of a consultative nature. I just wondered if you want to touch on what you see as the future of CBD retailing.
I mean, I'd say you're starting to see crossover. I mean, when I first started as well, that's how I started my company, was I would go to vape competitions and find out what all the big vape users and all the Cloud King winners and everyone was using. And that's when I kind of made that decision to not go with that silica fiberglass base wick and that standard type G2 cartridge. So, you know, there was almost no crossover at that time. We're starting to see more crossover now than I have in the past, just based on the number of customers that are jumping on board. But it's really up to, you know, the store and their product mix that they want to carry. Are they going to miss that revenue? Or are they going to have, you know, the store down the street take that revenue from them? So, you know, it's really just kind of filling out your product portfolio. You know, I don't think it's as, you know, generalized as you just meant with the tattoos and all that. I don't see that that often. There are, you know, hints of that as well in, you know, the rogue type stores. But once you start getting into the legal and regulated market, it starts changing, and you start seeing a major shift in not only people, businesses, but the people selling those products as well. So I think you're starting to see a lot more professionalism kind of come into this industry. So I don't think it's you know, the old the beads hanging in the, you know, the old way of displaying it. So, you know, we're starting to see a major evolution in that space.
And then I also think CBD is an everyday product. So I mean, outside of that, I mean, convenience stores, you know, Whole Foods, et cetera, those type of stores. I mean, this is something, anywhere that you can buy an energy drink or buy a water, you know, this should be another product that's available there. So not just the specialty smoke shops, vape shops, et cetera. I mean, you know, I mean, CBD is now moving into all those different avenues. So it's definitely really exciting.
If you look at Europe, they're given the fact that cannabis is still banned in the majority of the market over there, there are certain CBD lounges that are being opened across Europe. I mean, I know in Paris there are 4 of them. They got into some legal trouble and then figured it out, but really CBD specific lounges with a full range of different CBD products as well. And yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more of that. In the US, I'm not sure we're going to see too much of that because there's dispensaries. So I'm not sure that's going to mix well here, but overseas, definitely.
I would actually wholeheartedly disagree with what you just said. We found that, you know, by doing research on the space, that smoke shops were actually the first channel that was carrying products, and some of the early movers and the first consumers that started using CBD were cannabis consumers, were tobacco consumers. They were the first ones that knew what a cannabinoid was and understood the medicinal values. We found that there's distinct consumer segments that are emerging among CBD consumers, and they're wildly different. People are using for different reasons. They're using different product types. They're using, you know, and their approach and their thought process around CBD is wildly different. You know, and the kind of stressed out millennial crowd is a very large percentage of overall CBD consumers, and they do shop at vape shops, and they do like to see CBD vapes, and they like to see CBD gummies. That's, you know, it's a really strong segment of the millennial crowd. It's completely different than, you know, the aging baby boomers who are using to take a bite out of their, you know, arthritis or their chronic pain, or for, you know, many of their other conditions. They're wildly different from, you know, people who are using as part of a wellness lifestyle, that are using, you know, topicals after, you know, a weekend warrior type, you know, environment. So it's, you know, there are these various segments of consumers that are emerging, and they purchase through different channels, and they have different need states and different product types they go after. But, you know, there is still a very strong overlap. Smoke shops as a percentage of the overall market are declining, certainly because more retailers are starting to capture these products, are starting to carry these products through natural food stores, through big boxes and things like that. But there is absolutely an overlap between CBD usage and, you know, the smoke shop consumer.
I mean, I just saw Starbucks started carrying CBD infused coffee product in some regions. So not saying that that's going nationwide or anywhere.
Can we get that in the Nitro Brew? Or?
Right? So, I mean, it's your business, right? If you're going to miss out on one of the largest, you know, segments and opportunities that's been around in, you know, one of our lifetimes, it's totally your choice and your company.
I just wanted to say good job, everybody. I wanted to ask a question in conjunction with the federal laws on hemp and marijuana with kind of hazy clarity. Is there any risks with the relationship with your commercial bank in carrying and marketing CBD through the store?
I mean, so banking's always been a difficult issue for the cannabis space, especially. I mean, we do, $15+ million a month in revenue, and that's an excessive amount of cash to be toting around. So it's been a really, really big issue for banking so far. We've been seeing a lot of, I can get a CBD bank account at most places. I mean, I don't have a lot of issues at all with my CBD side. It's the THC plant touching side that you actually have more issues with. If you are opening up a CBD shop, would I go to a Wells Fargo or a Chase? Probably not. I'd start at your credit unions and kind of work there first and ensure that you are set up for a bank account that can have that product. I think we use MAPS Credit Union and Salal, a couple other different banks as well. Also, credit card processing has now been coming around at a very rapid rate. You can actually get reasonable fees. When I first started, I was paying between 12 and 18% on fees, just getting absolutely robbed. And now we've seen that kind of adjust down to 2 and 1% based on your volume. So, you're starting to see a lot of it come around, but just be transparent with your bank prior. Maybe don't go to the same bank that you have your personal checking account at, or where you have a loan on your house at. Just be smarter about it and just keep things separate. Ask the right questions before you kind of jump in. I'd hate to see anyone have, Wells Fargo, which is, can get upset with you at any moment for any reason, and then they shut down, your business account, which could be tied to a personal account and so forth. So, still kind of be smarter on the banking side. We are seeing the industry come around. We are seeing new legislation kind of going into place that will allow banking on a much broader scale, but, don't Greenway, Medicinal, Holistic, CBD, LLC. It's probably not the best name, to put on the banking application.
We've been hearing too. I've been hearing at the show for the past 3 days, people working with payment processors, and the stories I've been hearing don't make sense business-wise. They're opening up and taking the words cannabis and CBD off their websites to get approval, and then they put it back on, and it gets shut down a month later when the payment processor checks it. Imagine all that time you're wasting, and they're doing that 5 or 6 times until they find someone who's actually going to do it. A lot of companies are doing that. I mean, it can seem a good short-term solution in terms of business. It's just a headache.
Yeah, just be upfront about it.
Yeah.
Give one?
Any other questions? I think that's the last question. If you guys wanted to finish out for this session. Any other questions? No?
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Certainly feel free to approach any of us afterwards if you have additional questions. But welcome to the crazy, interesting, exploding world of CBD. 2019 is certainly going to be an interesting year, and you'll see a lot more in the way of innovations, more products hitting the shelves, CBD in many different retailers. And so, all of you will have to decide if you're going to be one of them. So.
Thank you, guys. Great panel. Have a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your show today, guys.